Did you say something about changing your mood? Because I mean, honestly, this seems to do it almost every time.
Welcome to Tech Talk on a Tuesday, where Corey and Jimmy talk to smart people about tech that is way above their head, but intensely informative, super fun. Sooner or later, somebody's going to make an inappropriate joke. We're definitely going to give away a bunch of NFTs. And quite frankly, we're just going to learn the whole time. If you have any ideas about who we should have on Tech Talk on a Tuesday, please let us know by adding us in the comments or just finding us. Just stalk us down. It's fine. Just talk to us. Tech Talk on a Tuesday.
So I'm gonna get my studio back running again. Yeah, I can't. Every time I see that now, I can't. I just cringe.
Well, I mean, as time goes on, usually we diverge further away from where we began, but we might be coming back because there is some truth to that this week. I mean, we're here for another live AMA Tech Talk on a Tuesday, volume number 4, and Corey and Jimmy are going to talk to really smart people. We've got Chris Tuttle on the line, which is great. We're going to answer some of your questions that were in the Discord right after we put up some gratitudes. So welcome back to the 4th AMA ever. It'll only happen once. That's a great thing with numbers and sequentials. Gratitudes. Let's get them up.
It'll only happen once. There is only one number 4, Jimmy.
Yeah.
So anybody out there, there's 6 people watching already. By all means, throw a short gratitude up there. We'd love to get out there. We got Chris just on audio, Chris Dowel, this morning. So maybe Chris, we could start with you.
Hey, I'm grateful for health this morning. To be honest, I'm maybe not quite 100% yet, but I was sick all last week, and what a pain in the butt when you're trying to do other important things. So.
Okay. Jimmy.
Some of you know I'm teaching the missus how to drive because I'm not technically supposed to drive with one arm. And today we went on a little bit of an adventure, and she did really well considering we probably should have died. Japan, thin roads, big deep drop offs into rivers that the car would roll down, and crazy stuff. So today. I'm grateful for the missus's ambition to learn because she's trying really hard.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not the best driving teacher. I'm a really good driver, by the way, but not the best driving teacher because I freak out and it's common sense.
That's definitely what to yell at someone when they're just learning to drive. Out of context. Well, no, that's cool. I'm glad she's learning.
No, she's doing great. So shout out to her. Corey, what are you grateful
for? I honestly, Chris and Wayne. This Chris, you Chris. We're still working on this contract stuff. It's what's the word, Jimmy? Fun. That's
trying. It's trying at times.
It's challenging and educational. Both Wayne are lead software engineer and Chris, who's sort of just the if we have a conductor of this ridiculous orchestra, I would say it's probably her. We've got a thread where basically they just manage me, but very effectively. And so I'm really grateful for that because I'm pretty new at all this stuff, and they're both significantly smarter than I am, so it works out pretty well. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Bello, good morning.
So, while Corey puts his last ones up, what'd you think, Chris? We wrapped up the lift off odds and ends sale. I think people were pretty stoked. I mean, I honestly think like if we could track it, we should have a contest the next time we do something like that to see who lays the first block after the NFTs actually go live, because like, there were people in there within seconds, waiting on their plots for the time to run out. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, there are
like,
actually people there are people in days before scoping out the plot, and they were just ready, so that as soon as they won one, they were good to go.
Yeah.
I think things went really well. Thanks to a couple of community members who wound up missing bids or not getting a couple of bids in that they wanted, we wound up doing that bonus auction for an extra 24 hours after. And honestly, I think that was a great idea and a big success. And I think the biggest thing we learned here is if we're going to do a week of auctions, we might be better off doing 3 or 4 24-hour auctions than one 6 or 7 day auction. Like,
oh, that's interesting. That makes total sense to me in retrospect.
Right, because you give people a chance to bid on the plots that they want the most,
Yeah.
and those have bidding wars, and then they claim those plots, and then in the next wave they can bid on the plots around those plots instead of having to guess, what plots they need to have secondary bids on. And if you have a few waves of that, it lets people build up pretty neat looking estates that aren't just a bunch of squares that they bid on, hoping that one cluster would be untouched. So.
Well, it has, and hashtag shameless plug for me, because like there's no possible way we would have been able to get all the plots that link what I'm trying to put together as the gratitude rail with that, because like there was no time to go out and reach out to people and see like who was interested and what lines to draw on. Same thing with like a lot of people in Uplift. They were like, kind of tapped out, but then they lost some bids in other servers and they were able to go back in and link more lands, which is really good. So I like that idea a lot. I'm glad that we found that out kind of by chance, because it wasn't planned by any means, right?
Right. Well, and so like thinking about it, we've got the snapshot coming up. And then after that, once we're in a position of DAO and voting and all of this, I could see the DAO wanting to have this auction, just like we did it, reopened once a month. Maybe even more than once a month, just have it up there, have the floors, sort of at the same that they were before, not try to undercut or even, go way over the floors, but just make those plots available so that any new players can get plots in areas that are kind of sparse, and any existing players that want to might be able to expand their estates. Between that and like packaging up small sections of it as blends for shards, right? So that we'll have future packs, not just Thum, but we'll have like, say a water region in Londum or some Uplift in the, top right corner or something. We'll have a few options later. But I think those would be the two main purposes of land in our existing worlds from now on, unless something big changes, is, let's just open up the auction when the DAO wants them, and let's pack some of them up into land packs that people can blend shards for.
Now, I mean, for me, like I'd be interested in voting on that, because for me, I'd rather see us do like, one server every month on a rotational basis, so that like instead of everything, so that we could, tap into the worlds and the builds and the people and the marketing and stuff. But like you said, like a lot of this stuff will be, discussed after the DAO drops. Like a lot of these things are going to change once the DAO comes into effect, because there'll be people with different ideas and different thoughts on different committees working with different people that will, ultimately decide some of this stuff or help to influence it at the very least, right? Which I think is pretty cool.
Totally.
All right, let's dive in. If there's anything that you want to start with, Chris or Corey, we can start with that. And if not, then we'll dive into the AMA questions on Discord. If there's anything you guys would like to address first,
I think you can go for the questions.
All right, so the first question was, who controls the account Uplift Pool SX?
Yeah, so that one, and I think Nifty Blocks P, those two are the pools for land packs, for the land that you would get when you open up that pack. So we stuffed them full of land, but we're not really in control of them either. I think that Atomic controls one and Nifty controls the other effectively. So we can't just pull land out of that, because that land is already spoken for by packs that we have sold, if that makes sense.
This one's interesting to me because I've had like a bunch of multiple thoughts around similar ideas, and I'm not really even sure which one I like best. But I think that there's, and Chris, I know that you have as well, and I know Corey and I have had discussions about certain things and been entertaining questions about, free parcels of land where people can do whatever they want, and like the art server type of thing that I wanted to have that collective area in the middle, which we will be able to do a little bit in Thune, but it'll be whitelisting. It'll be a little bit different than what we had originally thought for that kind of community plot. But I think that this is an interesting question by Stallman. Why not make a new nemesis in 1.18 or 1.19, not connected to the cluster, just for people so that they can explore and play with another version, make an entrance fee, weekly fee, or stuff like that to burn lithium?
Yeah, and I think we will. Like, I don't think it'll be Nemesis necessarily, but events worlds and, access-based worlds that don't have land ownership in them are absolutely something the DAO is going to want to look at. This is a great place to burn up lithium or to even use wax for the occasional entrances. The big thing is that it's not connected to the survival cluster, right? Like, what we're looking to not do right now is create a resource world where anyone can go and just mine all the resources they want and then bring them back into our current survival cluster. If we look at things like a hardcore survival world where keep inventory is off and PvP is on, so there's stuff getting lost all the time, getting burned all the time, when there's that kind of economy, then having regions that are there that are free for all is something that we can totally do. Because again, people will be killing each other on them. The other side of things where it gets a little complicated is with griefing, right? Like, again, a hardcore survival cluster, you expect to be griefed, quote unquote. That's part of the game. But if we open up things that are connected to the current survival cluster, there's going to be expectations of policing of behavior in there. And that can, we're trying to avoid situations where we have to go beyond the game rule and police things. So, it just gets complicated the more that stuff that we connect together. But as an event-based thing, as a one-off thing, and even as something that gets reset every few weeks and is sort of recurring, totally stuff we can look at.
Yeah, and I mean, from my side, there's some really interesting ideas that you could do, right? Like you could open up, like you said, like an events-based, PvP server where anything goes, and instead of letting people, keep inventory and bring it back, like what was the case in Nemesis, you could have sponsorships for various NFT projects and give out prizes according to like what gets done, right? Like maybe the person who lives the longest, or maybe the person who dies the quickest, can get an NFT from the sponsors or something like that, right? Like there's all sorts of plays that could potentially go into all sorts of different servers. And I would definitely encourage people who have NFT projects or crypto or blockchain projects, especially on Wax right now and in other, on other blockchains in the near future, to reach out to us, because as you guys know, this season of rewards is partially sponsored by BluDAC, and we'll be giving away Blue for rewards, and we can do that with sponsorships. We can give out tons of NFTs, different things from people who want to, contribute. And so like there's another event probably coming up in the next, week or two, where one community member has just went out and collected all of these prizes that he wants to just give away to the community. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of this, like in terms of, not just billboards, but like NFTs going out and things with value and stuff like that. So I'm kind of excited to see how it goes. And, not everything, like you said, Chris, is always going to be connected to the survival cluster, right? There's far more options and other really interesting things, right? One of the issues that I had was I wanted to, make coral live above ground, but we couldn't do that because that would mess up the survival economy. Anyway, next question. I like this one too. This is a good question. Can you provide some more detail as to how the DAO will work in conjunction with committees? Now, I would actually flip that, and I would say how committees will work in conjunction with the DAO, because, but yeah.
Yeah, so Ultimately, anything could have a proposal raised at the Dowel level on snapshot.org. If that proposal gets enough sort of votes in the pre-stage to reach quorum, then it goes through for a full vote. And if it then gets, then it gets voted yes or no on, and whatever's taken there is what we do. That's sort of the be all and end all. One of the things the DAO can vote to do is empower committees. So give groups of people specific mandates and budgets and scope so that they can then work without needing to go to a full DAO vote every time, getting that kind of quorum, getting that kind of support in order to do the things that the DAO already thinks they're going to be doing. We can use Discord for polling because you can assign people in committees roles. You can set up polls so that they're only accessible by people with those roles. And you can have the channels themselves more or less open so that anyone can see or even maybe participate in, but only the committee members can vote. So there's lots of options that can be set up there. And I have a feeling that the committees that we've initially proposed aren't going to be the final state of committees for the DAO. There's going to be some change there as various, power vacuums for certain areas are noticed, right? Like this is going to be a evolving process. If a committee does something or is about to do something that the DAO doesn't like, we could have a DAO vote to overrule the committee. You can also have a DAO vote to temporarily pause the actions of a committee. Ultimately, it comes back to that voting process, but we have to assume that if we're putting in the people that we want to be there on these committees that are in line with what the DAO's original ideas are, that the DAO isn't going to push back hard on everything a committee tries to accomplish. But, again, we'll see. It might wind up being a lot more antagonistic. Some DAOs really are, and that can work very well too. But, I have a feeling that we're not that far apart right now on what we all want. So.
Well, and the thing that I like about it too is it allows a little bit more focus by people on what they're good at and what they're interested in, rather than having like 10 people doing like 10 different things and trying to, lift this project up off the ground, which is kind of what's happening right now. You have, 10 people on each committee that are like focused on that committee doing those things, which, enables and allows people to focus on what their strengths are, as opposed to, having to just do everything. And I think that that's going to be really good. So question 2 of that by the same person was, given that anyone is able to submit a proposal, how do we ensure that proposals are fit for purpose, fact, guidelines, minimum standards, templates, etc., or proposals are not duplicated, and the number of proposals are not onerous? This may surprise you, but many people already have their own view on how the uplift should work. Yeah, not surprised at all. We hear all of your views about how your idea is completely right and everybody else is wrong. I mean, that's civilization for you in a nutshell, really. That's politics, that's government, that's always going to happen. Now, I think, Chris, you kind of answered that first one a little bit, right? Like, but let's go back through them one by one. Given that anyone is able to submit a proposal, how do we ensure that proposals are fit for purpose? Well, I guess like the community guidelines will work, and you kind of touch base on like there will be some autonomy within the committees, probably to figure some of this stuff out. Like not every committee, I'm assuming, will have the same exact structure when it comes to guidelines and
the way I'm hoping that part will look is on the first side, you've got the quorum threshold for a vote to even make it through to full voting. So a lot of proposals will sit there in that hopper, maybe being pulled down and put back up and getting some votes, but not reaching full quorum. And during that time, that's when everyone can look at these things that are pending and say, hey, look, how do we make this better? How do we refine it? How do we, there's 2 proposals here that look like duplicates of each other. Why don't we merge those? And we can build the strongest proposals that are most likely to reach that quorum threshold and be voted on. Once they're voted on, it's not like they get magically implemented either. And it's very unlikely that the DAO is going to want to do the kind of granular sub-voting to assign every duty within a project to every role or committee member that is available, or even community member. So the way I see this usually going is proposals that are approved then go to, I think we've got a new projects committee. I'm pretty sure that's one of them. I forget. But they go there, and that committee is responsible for making sure that what got voted through is sufficient, and is that there's room for it in the project sort of scope, or in the scope of what people can do right now. They'll also clear it with the budget committee and make sure that there's enough money to cover that project. And if any of those things aren't there, it'll be put back for revoting. And I mean, if the Dow wants to then do some sort of override vote saying, hey, look, we're going to do this no matter what, we want these 3 people to work on it and not do anything else, the Dow can make a fairly granular proposal and try to get something like that through, even if it's at the, with the dissent of some of the committee members.
But I think some of us are even just sitting, waiting, watching to see how this is all going to play out, right? Like I've sat on a number of DACs and DAOs, all structured a little bit differently. This is all new to me. I've never been a part of this kind of structuring and system. So I think, a lot of times things like this will become a little bit more apparent once we get going. So the next question, maybe, I don't know. I just kind of want Corey to answer this because I think his response will be great. Given that Upliftium is the main reward and in-game currency, should there be an internal market committee, central bank, and FED, if you will?
Should we have the Uplift Fed? Hoy. I mean, this is a fun question, right? Because we have conversations about this, internally all the time, right? Like it creating a healthy economy is sort of a huge part of what we're trying to do here, right? So that makes sense. And I mean, I'd actually love Chris's opinion on this. I can see a time when we've launched a lot more features that burn Upliftium, right? Because we still have a really huge backlog of those that are sort of waiting or sort of just grinding out schedule to get to those, right? So getting to that point where decisions around, do we increase inflation for this partner project, or just figuring out, here's the 10 kind of levers that we have to increase the amount of distribution or increase the amount of burn or right. I can see passing that off to a committee.
I'm sure we
at some
will,
point.
right? And I think that's what the rewards committee is going to ultimately wind up being about, right? Because their tools are the wax in the rewards pool, the Upliftium emissions, right? Shards, and if they want to work with other committees to figure out new NFTs or new things like that. But basically, they'll have access to those and be primarily responsible for how those distributions change. Like right now, we've deliberately tied a bunch of levers together. So anytime we increase the mining rate or we add a new miner, then the Upliftium rate for active rewards increases by that amount too. So basically the total Upliftium emission is 2 times the miner rate for all of the different mining pools that are available. And we've been very cautious about which new mining pools we open. Down the line, as people grow, the first thing to do is just release more miner pools with more blends so that those new people can buy old miners, connect things together. And as a result, both the active rewards pool goes up, but we can uncouple those, or the rewards committee could uncouple those, or a Dow vote could uncouple those at any time. And we could start increasing the amount of Upliftium that goes out through our active reward system. I think there's also going to be conversations around exploring additional reward systems, right? So we've got this activity tracking based system, but people might want a quest system as well. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. There could be a new Upliftium emission rate that is set up for quests where you pay a certain amount of money to register of Upliftium to register your sign as being on the lap. And then every day someone has to go around and punch at least 15 signs that are on that lap in order to, get their quest Upliftium for the day. There's a bunch of things like that we could look at. And they would all, they don't have to take away from the active rewards Upliftium. They could be more emissions. But I do think having sinks is really important. And until we have the automated syncs going, and until we're in a position where most people feel very comfortable burning a lot of Upliftium, we don't want to dramatically increase the amount that's going out.
And I think that sort of like, and again, I know there's questions going in the comments. We just want to make sure we get to all the excuse me, all the ones that are actually in the AMA channel on Discord before we get to those. But a paddle was talking about trying to figure out how to make the internal economy more external.
I was going to poke the bear with that. I kind of want. I kind of want to dive into it actually. If we're okay.
That's like everything we were just talking about is all that, right? Like that. There's only two ways that we could ever do that, and that is decreasing the amount that's going out will increase scarcity, right? Or creating more demand, right? And I think like the creating more demand is going to be the easiest thing for us to focus on over the near term.
It's a pet peeve of mine too, and I'm going to try to be really nice about this, but like we're in crypto and we're a little bit spoiled. I mean, 1 million Upliftium for $5 is not enough to keep people interested. I mean,
100,000 in-game transactions later.
Let's think about this really, right? Like, because where else other than like play to earn games do you essentially get free interest on your holdings and your activities, right? Nowhere. Free market economy, the way that it's structured in the real world, we're a little bit spoiled here because we buy things. To go watch yesterday's show, damn it. Corey and I went on a big rant about this. Right. So anyway, we'll go back to the AMA. But yeah, like I get it. But I think Corey made a really good point yesterday, right? Like there's a lot of projects that came out of the gates swinging, as it were, and made a killing. And, now where are they? They've kind of dropped off. You don't hear about them very much anymore. And sadly, some of them are even our friends, and we were hoping that they would do well, but like, we're not really sure where they are, right? Like our plan isn't to, get rich and go live on Corey's 50,000 foot yacht. Our plan is to still be around.
Growing in this story. That's
right?
A very large boat.
Our plan is to still be around in 5 years, to still have a sense of community, to still, be pushing barriers and boundaries of what the Dowel is to become, right? Like all of these things are kind of working into the overall scenario of what we're building together, right? Like not just the team, but the community and all of these other things. So, I mean, controlled economies. I mean, that's personally why I'm in crypto, because I hate controlled economies, but sometimes there's a downside to the market. Anyway, back to the Discord before I lose everyone with my craziness. So this is a really interesting one too, and I don't even know if we have an answer for this. Will the CK governance structure change under the Dowel? And I like this question because, like, as you know, like they were kind of the test case for what a Dowel could potentially become, right? Like you have the CK7, they were kind of doing their own thing. There was a thing back in the day where, they wanted to do things that would kind of put the survival economy at peril, and they had to come to a decision. Do we want to do this and, be out there on our own, with those fierce chickens and having no, connected economy, or do we want to be part of the survival economy? Like it's a very different scenario. It's a very different situation. It's the only server really where there is kind of a committee already that has say beyond what the Uplift team has built. So the question again, will the CK governance structure change after the Dowel? I think this is a really interesting question to dive into.
Yeah, and I mean, I think probably somehow, like you scratch the surface with the fact that at the very least, the CK7 and Chicken Ka is the first world Dowel in a way. Right? Like we haven't provided the tools for them to vote. The way that the world Dowel and the world got instantiated is not how future ones would, but they are the first world Dowel. That's different from the full overarching Dowel. The world Dowel is a group of people that own most of the land and control a lot of the rules on that world. And I think the CK7, like you said, they wanted to be a part of the survival cluster. So they basically agreed, hey, look, we'll set our rules to be what are required for the survival cluster. And in order to participate in the survival cluster, the rules are fairly strict. There isn't a huge amount of leeway per world. Like if the CK wanted to change their difficulty level, they're more than welcome to. But if they wanted to turn PvP on across the whole world, that might be something where like that's too much for being a part of the survival cluster. But that said, they could always break apart from the survival cluster and start and be a world that is in a vacuum. And come world DAOs down the line, like quite a ways down the line, we need the population for this. But if you bought a world DAO, chose a world, and you chose rules that were in line with what CK was, you and CK could be two worlds in a new cluster. Like, I think there will be more than one quote unquote survival cluster in the future. There will be instead groups of worlds with similar rules that are similar enough that they're able to have a shared inventory on. Beyond that, like, I think we have to have chats with the CK7. Like, I think it's great to have them around, and I would like them to be an integral part of the Uplift going forward. But we've had priorities right now and just getting through the legend stuff, getting the land sale through, and I don't think we've had a huge amount of direct contact with them with how they want to proceed with things like the next sales and what it's all going to look like. So
yeah, hey, there's one question based on I didn't hear you say this, but Jay was saying and TC was asking, just wanted to make sure I heard Chris correct. Did you mean that there's a chance that current uplifting and minor drip pools could be turned off in the future?
No, never turned off.
Right.
A rewards committee or a DAO vote could, in theory, reduce the amounts. Internally, we've always said, let's not do that. Let's set the amounts so that we can always increase them, but so that we don't have to reduce them and just sort of ratchet them up a little bit. But like, the DAO will have full control of those levers. If they would really like to, they could probably reduce it. The current team is going to have a lot of DAO voting sway, and I think it would be easy for a lot of us to vote together as a block on something if we felt really fearful about it. Like, if a DAO group did come in and say, hey, look, we would like to vote to get rid of the miners completely, I have a feeling a lot of the team would not only go out and canvass, but would also vote against something like that because it would be so contrary to what we had previously hoped for. But
yeah, I want to go back to the AMA questions, but Danny, remind me in the comments if we don't get back to this, because I have some thoughts on this as well. But let's go back to the AMA channel first and make sure that we get through all of those. There was a little bit of an exchange in here with ET51 and Sadisti and a few other people. Now, there's some observers, world observers and things like that are helping us out in the community channels and answering questions, and a bunch of different people. So the thing was, basically, if one of the team wants to contact me, I'll offer my services for free to try to help draw up an organizational chart for what the DAO may look like and how it will work. This will make it easier for everyone to get a visual idea of things, hopefully, when we move forward in a positive way. I think like the white paper did a decent job of kind of like outlining it. And I think in the future, once everything is launched and set in stone, then there will be places for this. But like, I really want to help out the community and have the next 2 weeks off to work on something. I think the next 2 weeks is a little bit fast.
Well,
for
so
where
here's
we're moving, right? But
here's where I jump in there. And like you say, the white paper, in theory, has most of the information there. But the way we can test that is if people who have the time build a bunch of diagrams, release those diagrams into the public chat and say, hey, look, this isn't how I propose things work. This is how I think the white paper is suggesting things work. And if we all work together on from that same initial framework, and we aren't necessarily trying to tear it all down and come back from a first principles discussion on how an org chart works, then there's a lot of room right now for those sorts of discussions.
Yeah, and I just, again, I just want people to be cautious. Like, we are using the Discord as kind of like the official place that we can monitor and moderate, right? Like, that's not meaning that we're going to catch everything. I mean, I deleted a message today that could have been a nefarious link. I don't know. It had nothing to do with Uplift and things like that. But like, I just want I want you to be encouraged to push people towards the Discord if they have questions, right? Because then at least we're looking, the team is looking. I mean, Tuttle doesn't sleep. I'm not really sure. Like, I think she lives on 52-hour days because she seems to be awake 28 of them. Right? Like, she's always in the Discord. She's always picking up questions and bringing them back. Some other people, Cowie's quite good at it. Samantha's quite good at it as well. So at least we have a presence there so we can see these types of things. So I think as long as people are getting their information from there and not necessarily from Twitter or other places that we're not monitoring, then it's probably okay. Question number 5. In AMA, it was alluded that the team is not being paid. I'm not sure if I misunderstood. Can you confirm or clarify? No, we are not being paid. I'm not being paid. I'm working my ass off. None of us are being paid right now. Next question. We're here for the community. We're here for you all. We're trying to do some good things. Hopefully in the future, we can get a little bit of compensation. But the love that we have for all of you out there, and the joy that we see on your faces and the sparkles in your eye the minute you are able to lay that first block seconds after you've claimed the plot of land as your auction is all the compensation right now that we need.
No, I mean, and that is how it's been. Like, now that we've had our odds and ends auction, we're heading towards being able to ramp up activities again. And we would like to start paying some roles soon. Right. But that's not the same as like just paying the team. That's paying for the positions that we feel like we need right now. There's a lot of roles available. Not all of them will necessarily get filled from day one. But that's starting to spend money in exchange for focused effort on very specific parts of the DAO. And as we increase our operational funds, we'll be able to expand that. But we're just being tentative here and careful. And
so, as a preface to this next one, we had Anders on the show a couple weeks ago. We talked about this a couple days ago, maybe Corey and I on our show. And I haven't actually read it yet. I just saw it before we came live. But Adrian Crone from Wombat just released an article, I think, over on, I could be wrong about this, but over on Cointelegraph, that was talking about, play to earn games and NFTs and, sustainability. And the question is, have you heard of any P2E blockchain games that are self-sustaining? I mean, my counter question is, have you heard of a real world economy that's self-sustaining? Because they're all going to shit right now. But like, I think that we're actually doing a semi-decent job of being self-sustaining, or we were, or we have the potential to. Like, I kind of am a little bit confused by what you mean self-sustaining. I mean, to be able to sell and use that money to develop, I guess, would be self-sustaining. But yeah, do you guys want to maybe hit on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a valid question, right?
I don't. I'm not saying it's a valid question. I'm just. It's not a valid question. I'm just saying, like, I'm a little bit unclear on what self-sustaining is. Do you mean like the project is self-sustaining, or do you mean that the? I mean,
that's what I was right. Like, how are we going to? I mean, this. I think about this question all the time, right? Like, how do we keep the server lights on forever?
Right.
Because that's not an inexpensive thing. Right, we need to, as a DAO, have a consistent form of revenue, and selling land isn't that. Right, selling land is a great way to, kind of bootstrap, but it's not, necessarily something we could do forever. I could actually make an argument that we could, depending on just constantly. I mean, there's billions of people on this planet, right? As long as we're bringing in, 2,000 people for every 1,000 pieces of land we're sending, you can make that argument. We could do that for the rest of time, and it would actually make sense. If you set it up with the right parameters, but that's not, what our focus is. The events, I think, are going to be really massive. NFT integration for other products is going to be really massive. So, creating value so that the platform that we're creating, people are spending, whether it's wax or dollars or whatever, to gain access to different elements or different things, different ways that we're bringing as a DAO value to that ecosystem is something that, I mean, it's been on our minds for a long time. Like, I think events is probably going to be the earliest part of that, but by no means the last, right? Like, not everything is going to be an uplifting burn. And so, we'll be, rolling stuff out for that, a little bit this year, but like more and more every year. Right. I mean, this year, I think we've, going multi-chain and doing the small maps on a bunch of different platforms is like, sort of, we need to go from zero to actually funded so that we can, pay Jimmy more than zero. Right. But yeah, long term, I mean, creating that sustainability is going to be huge. I mean, you look at the largest grossing games, video games, they're all the ones that are doing tournaments. Just a little wink, wink, and a nudge as to where we might take this.
Right. Well, and just to take it really generically too, from like a pure like a tokenomics sort of viewpoint too, no game, like no economy survives if there isn't any change. Eventually you find that sort of strange attractor, the stability points, and things sort of bottom out or they oscillate around something, and that's boring and it doesn't work. Like the main place where it's been easy for games to change in some ways is just to bring in new players, right? And especially in the NFT space, as long as you have a constant influx of new players who are looking to then buy things off of the old players or from the DAO itself, like that is a way that things are fueled. And that's not sustainable because eventually you run out of new players and it gets harder and harder to get new players. The side that is, I think, sustainable is new complexity within the game, within the metaverse, new depth. And that doesn't have to mean, hey, here's a new item type that you have to buy and here's how it fits into everything else. It can be a lot more subtle than that. Just changing, like creating a new blend for an existing miner that has already had some blends going for it, changes which miners some people want and which miners other people are speculating they might want later. And so suddenly you have new buying, you have new secondary market activity, you have people's brains going without having necessarily added a new level to the game or a new layer to the game. You've just made a small change. And I think as long as we're dynamically looking for places where we can do those changes, where we can keep people's brains sparking, then there's always going to be demand to participate in the ecosystem. And ideally, that also leads to people paying or being willing to pay more, right? Because, a healthy secondary economy can work from people selling things to each other for increasing value as they, sell something and then regret it and buy it from somebody else. There are all sorts of economies that work that way. So
we actually spend one day a week, 24 hours in meditative thought, thinking about how, our mythic miners that are attributed to individuals that built the Uplift will rise to the ranks of number one and not be zero. We put a lot of effort into this. I've never been zero, by the way, just saying. I've always been at least, one up from the bottom of the lowest market rate because Jimmy D has value right here.
That's just true. I did want to bring up like a panel talking about taking resources out of game as NFTs. He actually said, or they said FTs, but I think NFTs would be the way we'd want to do that. Chris, do you want to can we talk about that, or should we just leave that for?
Oh yeah. No, this is a good one to talk about, to be completely honest, because a lot of it is based on whether we want to, not whether we can. Right. So we would like to start to figure out a way to have people sacrifice and get rid of NFTs in exchange for leaderboard positions that could result in Upliftium or other things. Like that's a rewards mechanism. But the same mechanism by which you could sacrifice and remove something from the game, we could have so that as soon as it's removed from the game, you can see it on enter.TheUplift, and then you could maybe pay a little bit of Upliftium to crystallize that into an NFT, or in certain cases an FT as well. Those would be stamped with like, hey, currently it's just our survival cluster, but like if we have a hardcore survival cluster or other inventory sharing zones, we would need a stamp on each of those NFTs that basically says, hey, look, this is only good for this zone.
Right.
So there's a few things like that you have to pre-design for, but it's very doable.
Yeah.
As long as we're not the ones selling them ourselves, like if we're not, like as long as we don't have, hey, buy Minecraft wood for 5 wax per NFT and then let you melt it back into game, we're not running afoul of the EULA doing this. We're just extending the surface on which people can trade things. You can do it in game or you can do it on Atomic Hub now. And, we definitely want to be a part of that. So
right. I wonder too how long it takes before somebody in the wax or other ecosystem decides to make one of these mix and match games like Farmer's World, but out of the materials that people are bringing out of the survival clusters.
Oh, I mean, I super agree. Like,
that'd be crazy.
That kind of meta building is the next step, in my opinion, and it's one of those things that these side chains have a small advantage over ETH if you're going to do it on chain in a provably fair way. right? Like I've always said to my partner over here, like the first person to just do a memory matching game where it uses all of your own NFTs and it has a little wager system like at the schoolyard is going to rock this sort of thing. And we're heading towards a lot more complex stuff too now. But like on Ethereum, you have to go off chain for your game if you're going to do anything like that. On Wax, you can do it right on chain with the NFTs that people are used to, and they can see how it's all going to play out. And I mean, like NFTs against a wall, and whichever one's closest gets to pick an NFT from the pool. Like there's all sorts of fun stuff like that.
I mean, imagine if somebody came up with a marketplace that had a DeFi aspect that paralleled Uplift World Dirt to Immersi's Dirt. That would be quite interesting as well, right? Like you could be a part of two metaverses.
Honestly, those blends and the blending pools that NFT are doing, like that's not an if.
Right.
Anyone could do that. Right? Like that's like, yeah, these like this is why I was yelling at Juan and Jose when they started talking about like the blending pools, basically, right? Like super blending, taking different things from different collections and blending them to get another NFT. Cool. What about blending a token and an NFT to get an NFT, or blending a couple of tokens to get an NFT, or blending a couple of tokens to or NFTs to get a token, rinse, repeat, back and forth or whatever, right? That literally is like you're setting up a pool where it's just NFT DeFi, right? And that gets weird and fun. Right. And, the number of people that are going to be able to experiment with that, and so I think from the perspective of, even sustainability, right? Because like I think about sustainability often as, when secondary market equals all the money that we spend every month, like fucking game on, right? Like that's going to be a good moment, and we work towards that. So the more NFTs we have out there that have some kind of contextual value to someone, right? The more we can play with games, but I think other people can play with those kind of NFT games on their own, and make things that we never even could have imagined, right? And this is where things get out of control in a really good way.
Yeah, and I mean, I would love for people to set up galleries in the Uplift with NFT resources that they've quote unquote mined from Immersi's, right? Like
a million glass. In NFTs.
Yeah. That kind of leads us into our next question. Because I think this is, for me, right? The value of blockchain and cryptocurrency and tokens, for me, allows the common person to be able to have a passive income, which isn't always the case in the real world, right? And so I quite like that. And like Corey said, like the sustainability of individuals and projects is kind of similar in that sense, right? Like the business world that is set up in economics, in NFTs or in crypto, if you can live off of passive income via staking, via rewards pools, via voting, that's kind of smart. Right. And that's kind of what projects should be aiming to do as well. Now, so this leads into this question. Aside from sales, how does the Uplift earn revenue? I'm aware of some staking, our Planet Aether for uplifted lands, secondary market sales, but not sure what this is. So how do we get revenue as the Uplift world is the question, basically.
Well, we basically covered that already, right? As far as long-term revenue, I mean, the Aether for our planet worlds is now deeply inconsequential, and we've never used any of it. But yeah, I think near term outside of that, it's NFTs. It's creating more interesting NFT experiences, and all that stuff. And really, like if we could do some massive event, like I've been thinking a lot about like the Dowel treasury, and if we could get $1 million worth of USDT and stake that, right? Like we're gonna be able to cover our servers pretty well with just what comes off the other end of that. And you have to assume all these things like that are kind of short term. But why are you shaking your head like that?
Not USDT, UST, 20%.
UST, I'm sorry.
20% yield over the course of a year, right?
Right now, right? Like, right. And we wouldn't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, but yeah, having some, having a building up to that point where we have that resources to sort of, just deepen our potential resources in the future is something that is kind of interesting. But again,
I just really like the Buster shots.
nowhere near there.
That is all.
Yeah, it's
so
good.
a paddle, by the way, are you the person that blows up my DMs and I love you because you build stadiums in the Uplift world? And if you are, I want to address your question about your new NFT series and building a Solano gallery on the Uplift world. But I'll let you hit me up in the comments first before we do that. Back to the questions regarding uplifting burning. Is there any way to count the creation of shops to count towards players' uplifting burn amount? We kind of covered this, Corey and I, yesterday. We talked about it. I understand not doing all transactions, but 10K per shop adds up. So, yeah, I don't know since yesterday
Chris,
if anything's
do you
changed.
want to? Yeah, Chris had and I didn't explain this very well, but Chris, could you maybe explain it because you actually know what's going on?
Oh yeah, no, and so I'm just waiting to hear on whether or not that one's trackable. So with the for the actual shop transactions, yeah, it's too many transactions, and there's a couple of other reasons why we weren't set up to make it for it to be easy for us to track the burn on there. Even if you decide who is responsible for the taxes, right? Like, should that go to the buyer or to the seller? There's a bunch of issues around doing it at the transaction level. Not to mention the fact that, like, it's just the taxes. But for shop creation, it might be possible. I'm just waiting to hear if it's being tracked in a way that's going to be easy to come back to. If it is, I'd like to include it. I just can't make any promises yet, so don't start making shops on end just for that. Because we have the ability to burn Upliftium by just sending it to the We Save Uplift as well, I'm not worried that people will abuse the system to create a whole bunch of chests and of shop chests to burn. Like, if they created a chest, spent the 10K Upliftium, and then destroyed the chest and did it again, they're not getting any more value than if they had done it through just sending us the NFT directly. So I think it's safe to offer that. And we just have to make sure it's feasible.
Funko Coffee, you might have seen the Rabbitar gallery that I think is being built up by Mello, if I'm not mistaken, recently on our Twitter feeds. I am really excited about the Playboy Rabbitar gallery that I'm putting up. I was discussing it on the Playboy Discord, and people want to go see it. I copied the Uplift World startup page for them, but they are all ETH based. Is there something planned for when you drop the Dowel tokens on ETH to also allow the Dowel holders access? That way, some of these people can buy a Dowel token, extra demand supporting the price, and look around before hopefully participating. Like, this is a super interesting idea, right? Because the Dowel tokens are going to be dropped to landholders, and they're going to be on the market because they're NFTs. People can do with them what they want.
They're not NFTs. They're fungible tokens.
But they're transferable, right?
Yeah. They're just not NFTs.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we could do.
I see what you mean.
I love the
Sorry,
idea. I was talking about this idea yesterday, and I asked them to put it in the AMA questions because I think it's interesting.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Just
right, like gated access, like you got
tokens,
right, yeah. Or even like if you got $20 worth of Dowel tokens, but any might even work too, right? Yeah, why wouldn't?
Yeah, like we can put a threshold, we can figure out a number, but I think it's a great idea. Right, like I can't promise it day one when we drop the token because I just have to see where we're at as far as reading the ETH chain stuff for in game at the time. But by the time we're selling land on ETH, doing that will be easy, and I think it should be a nice, easy priority. And it's like an MVP to have a certain number of Dowel tokens give you passport level access in game. We can also sell NFT passports on the ETH side. Like, we'll have to finish our tech there, but we could have a passport, and gas is quite reasonable if we make the right kind of token. If we do this as an ERC 721A, we could sell passports for like 0.01 ETH or something, and then you could just buy directly if you don't want to buy Dowel token. So yeah, I think both those are worth exploring 100%.
But there's interesting ideas that have been happening in Ethereum around claim codes as well, which some of our partners have figured out. So I'm kind of excited to explore into that. I actually didn't piece that together. Thank you for correcting me. I didn't even think about fungible tokens. Fucking NFTs on the brain, man. I think everything's an NFT. Sometimes I wake up and I get my coffee and I'm like, is this an NFT? Is this original? Just this cup? Did I spoon it out correctly? Like, is it the same? Is it not? Is it the same proportions? Is it original enough to be like an NFT? I don't know. It gets confusing. Chris, for people who might be out there, do you want to maybe explain the difference between a fungible token and a non-fungible token? I think it comes down to originality, but I think that's a really good point to make because people might not get it.
It's actually a really hard or difficult line if you think about it too hard. If you think about it really easily, it's just that if it's a fungible token, then you or I shouldn't care which one of that token we have, as long as we have one of that token. And so for like most dollar bills, that would be true, right? Like neither of us care which stack we choose as long as the stacks are the same. But technically, dollar bills have serial numbers on them as well. And if you're a certain kind of coin collector, you might be treating dollar bills as non-fungible tokens and looking for really, really specific ones out of that are not the same to you as other ones. So it's the same thing on chain, like certain Bitcoin blocks that haven't been moved forever. The act of moving them is almost the same thing as a non-fungible token. Like you're creating a single one-off unique record that isn't really tradable. And some people would rather have that. Same with like unspent Bitcoins, right? Before they've been involved in various transactions. But realistically, they're all very fungible. Most people don't care. You can sell Ethereum or a lot of these ERC20 tokens into a Uniswap pool and feel safe that whatever you get back is also, not trade locked, not specifically, stolen or anything else like that. When you get into like what we consider to be NFT tokens, like ERC 1155, 721, 721A, I think there's a couple of others these days as well. They're often designed to host a lot of unique attributes, including often a unique image for each item in that series. So you might have like a collection, like say the Gutter Cat Gang, where like each of these tokens is a token ID 1 through 3000, but they also each have a unique image, and that unique image is linked to a bunch of unique attributes. And so there's a lot of specific and unique information for each Gutter Cat Gang NFT. And the format, the token format, the ERC 721A or 1155 is designed to facilitate that. But there is a blur between those lines, and it isn't a super duper clear thing.
Yeah, and so like the whole, I'm not going to do it because Corey's going to cringe, but I almost want to play the intro again, where Corey and Jimmy talk to smart people about shit, right? Like so the simple line, right, is that it doesn't really matter who holds the serial number or the mint number for number one DAO token. It's the same as the mint number for 1 million DAO token. I don't know how many DAO tokens we're going to have really, but like the voting rights are the same, like nothing changes, right? Like if you've got a fine art piece and you hold mint number 1, it's going to be more valuable. That's, probably something that you want to have, right? But whether you have number 83 or number 567 of the DAO tokens, it's not going to make any difference to your voting rights. It's not going to make any difference to, anything along that line. So yeah, you kind of covered that in a very unsimply way. I'm kind of impressed. I'm going to have to go back and listen to that. Like lots of ERC numbers out there. Chris, thank you. There's one more. Uplift World is headed to multi-chain. Does that mean that land key NFTs is transferable cross-chain, or each chain has its own world? So the second option, right? Like each chain will have its own worlds. There might be some cross-chain capacities within the game. Definitely people from one world will be able to jump through servers into another world and go and play. But I mean, I don't think that we've ever discussed that. I do think that we've discussed this. And if I recall correctly, at this point in time, it was a hard no that we'll never actually be moving lands from wax chains to other chains. They will
so
always
never say
remain on
never.
Right.
The big no was not now. Right.
Right.
We want to keep this really straightforward as we're moving to multi-chains, and we want to have it easy for you to buy knowing what world you want to be on to know which chain you have to go to get those NFTs for that world or for that plot. We don't want people to have to, get a plot on Uplift and they want to buy a neighboring plot and find out, oh, that's being bridged across to ETH and then since then also moved over to Solana, so I have to get a Solana account if I want to access that plot. It also lets each chain with the worlds on that chain sort of develop their own price point, which has a lot of value, right? If you think about it, people value things differently on Ethereum sometimes. And if we give a while for the worlds on there to establish that price point, then people always sit there thinking, do I buy this on Ethereum right now, or should I try a plot on Wax? Should I go get a Wax wallet, go through a couple of those hoops in order to get a plot that is still contiguous, is still part of the shared inventory with the world that I was going to buy on ETH, but I could go over on Wax and potentially get it a little bit cheaper. And I think that's going to be a much better mentality to coax than to make landholders feel pressured to bridge their land over to whatever chain they think they might be able to sell it on most easily. That second one feels a lot worse. So those are the main reasons. But the DAO could always vote to open up bridges. We could look at this once everyone's a lot more comfortable and has wallets on other chains. It's totally something we could approach. I just don't think it's worth starting there.
Yeah, fair enough. And I like the idea of, again, go back and watch, because Corey had a little bit of something to say on yesterday's show, about Ethereum and why certain things in Ethereum might be holding their value is because, to sell things on Ethereum with the gas fees the way that they are, sometimes you're going to be taking a loss, right? So like people tend to hodl sometimes, right?
I think that accounts for like an initial or lower level boost. It definitely doesn't account for the ocean of money that people are spending on a fucking like digital owl.
Right, I agree with that. Right, smart digital payments. You guys do well.
That other one they just dropped. Like
Moonbirds.
Moonbirds. I don't know what the fuck's going on there, but people are spending like multiple house money on a fucking bird JPEG. So, that at that level. The friction of not wanting to sell because of a $25 thing or even whatever gas happens to be at the day, it's just it's inconsequential. It doesn't matter. But for other projects, I think it can have almost a stabilizing effect. And I'm open to people proving me wrong if I am.
I love that about you. So we're gonna go back to one or two more questions in the Discord, and then if we have time, we'll scroll up to a couple questions.
Totally. These have been great questions, by the way. I'm glad everyone's so tuned into all this.
So I think this is a good question as well. Do regeneration on bigger plots, for example, in Gratitude, cost the same amount as the smaller 50 by 50s?
It's currently per 50 by 50 region, so they would cost more. Regen prices are something we should totally investigate. We put them up as another sink for people who want to burn up Liftium before this big snapshot. And so we figured most of the people doing the regens aren't necessarily going to care if it might be overpriced. I do think it is currently a little bit overpriced. And so it's something that, as we balance it, we might have to drop it down a little bit. I've always envisioned a way to charge more for each subsequent regen of the same plot, right? So like if there happens to be really, really good resources on there, you'll pay a little bit more to regen it each time, but we're definitely not there yet either.
Curious to know how many new players or wallets joined after the last auction. I don't know if we have stats on that, actually.
We can grab stats. I just don't think I have grabbed those stats yet. So.
And again, like a lot of the hype for this last auction was, I would say the biggest amount of hype was, I could be wrong about this, but Uplift, because Uplift, the way that it was structured originally, it was randomized plots. So there were a lot of people in Uplift that wanted to take those 50 by 50s because they were only available. 50 by 50s were only available in Uplift to be able to tailor their own estate and get bigger lands. So I was quite surprised by the amount of people in Uplift that had tried to carve out their region around something that was already built. And I was a little bit surprised about how many people wanted to be part of the Gratitude Railway. I'm super excited about Chris Tuttle's plan for next to Spawn. I don't know if you want to go into that, but you got a really cool idea that I think is going to be really fun. And I think that you have a request maybe from the community about some resources. Do you want to dive into that, or do you want me to go on to the next question and be quiet?
Oh, no, I'm just excited. And yeah, it looks like I'm going to be able to reach out and find a group of people to help me build this big ice boat slide that'll take you across a bunch of plots and eventually plonk you out at Spawn where you can take your boat and just go explore. So
That's fun.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of big builds myself in game. I've built a few houses on each plot and spent some time in there, but I haven't done anything large. So this will be fun.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I'd love to get new players access to my unused plots, but would I be held responsible for bad actors? Will there be a way for landowners to lock parts of their plots so users cannot change or access certain areas? And I want to expand upon this because there's a person in world right now that is kind of using one or two plots that they own as test cases. And what they've actually done is they've broken the plot themselves into various regions, and they've colored certain areas with colored beds, and they whitelist people to the plots to come in and experience it, right? And this person emailed me the other day, and he said, so far so good, but like, if anyone ever sets up an auto farm that I miss, and I get banned, can you put in a good word for me? Right? Like, so there is actually like an appeal process that we have. Like, you should definitely be aware of the people that you're whitelisting to your plots. And I'll give you a really good example. There's a plot that we're managing because we have this management account for community plots, kind of until they prove themselves, because we don't want to just be giving away free land that gets flipped on the open market. We had a couple of situations or scenarios before that back in the day, and one of our observers found like an auto farm on that plot that we manage in our account. Right. Luckily for us, we were able to catch it and wipe it out and shut it down. But like, this is a really real issue. And I think like the subdivision of plots might be something like way off further in the future. Like, we've talked about this for different aspects, right? Like for people like Mitzi and her hotels, right? Like, can I somehow, offer a segregated section of my plot for this? Right now, I would say just be careful of who you're whitelisting and just pay attention. I mean, there's an appeal process, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit on the three sides of things. So the first is like responsibility over people who are doing things on plots that you own. I sure hope, I would rather that we're leaning towards getting people in that you don't know incredibly well right now, than having you be extremely tight on access. We don't police, like if you let somebody into your plot and they quote unquote steal all your resources, we're not going to get in there and police that. Like, you let them on your plot, and that's the thing. If they have created an auto farm, what we usually do is we ban the plot owner, and then you go through Discord and say, hey, look, I was banned. It's because this person set up an auto farm. We say, okay, we'll ban that person instead, remove them from your plot, and we'll unban you. Like, we're not saying, hey, look, you're responsible for this and are held, perma-banned forever because somebody on your plot did this. I think some people are managing a decent number of sort of scholars right now. So, there are, with Axes, I know people started to share blacklists, right, of players who had done bad things before with each other, so that you could sort of have a check there before you let somebody in. And so, awesome. There might be stuff like that starts to happen here too. As far as permissions go, most of this will be solved by guilds. Right. So in guilds, you'll have a guild owner or like a guild manager NFT, as well as guild member NFTs. And as long as your guild members have registered, then they have the option of putting land into the shared guild pool to be managed by the guild. And then the guild manager can do sub-regions that are nested that give control to various guild members. So like, it will be totally possible to have granular subregions within a plot that aren't linked to separate NFTs, that are just linked to, hey, look, as long as you're a part of this guild, you have access to these shops, and nobody else has access to these shops. Even I, as the guild manager, don't. So, you're not going to have those ones be rated. I'm really looking forward to the guild's interface for that. subdivision and merging of plots is different, but is also something we really want to do. So once we've had the snapshot, which is based on land numbers, not on land area, we can go back and look at subdivisions where you'll basically burn the land plot for a large region and you'll get a bunch of NFTs for that region divvied up the way that you wanted it to be. That'll probably be semi-manual at first, so you'll probably just send us like a drawing of how you want it split up and we'll do the NFTs, but down the line it would be really cool to have that be automated as well. So yeah. Fun stuff.
Indeed.
I'm actually like, and again, we're probably really far off from this, but I'm a really big fan of being able to merge 450 by 50s into 100 by 100, or break a 100 by 100 into 450 by 50s. We haven't actually internally even thought about this beyond the idea, so it's probably not.
I think we put more thought in than you'd think, to be honest, because those are just blends, so It's not too bad.
But like, I don't want people to get excited. Like, it's not going to happen tomorrow, right?
No, nothing's going to happen tomorrow, but that is lower hanging fruit. So
I mean, shit's going to happen tomorrow. Like, I'm going to be in there building the gratitude rail. So if you're on that line, you better reach out to me so that we can get something through your plot. But like, yeah, nothing major is going to happen tomorrow. Last question from the Discord, and then we'll scroll up through the comments. It's a little bit of a touchy one here. I just want to ask if there's a plan to reward holders of Upliftium or Liftium. I mean,
I don't feel like that's touchy at all. Go to BluDAC.
That's what I was going to say, right? Like,
right?
There's already a bunch of different projects,
and that's not to say that we won't do interesting things in the future. That's a fascinating thing that we might be able to do, right? Like, I'm on Nefty a bunch, loving the fact that I could just stake my Nefty and get stuff from that or whatever, right? We might do staking DAO tokens down the road. Like that. There's just a never-ending basket of tools there. Right now, you can stake either BluAx or BluLiftium, Liftium Wax or BluLiftium on BluDAC and earn from that.
Totally, and like, let's be clear, like down the line, hodl gating is there in the white paper, right? So the idea of holding enough Upliftium to get access to various perks. But right now, the incentive really should be on burning it. Like, everybody should be thinking really hard about this DAO token and about their opportunity to gain access to this by using Upliftium for things that it's already intended for right now. Like, it took Axes a long time, and they're still having a hard time making it clear to people. Don't buy and hoard SLP. That's the token that is used if you want to breed Axes. Buy it to breed Axes. Buy it when you need it. Don't hoard it unless you're planning on doing like 200 breeds in a row and you're going to need it for that.
Right.
And same with Upliftium. It's meant to be used. And we've got a snapshot coming up at the end of the month where the more Upliftium you've burned, the more of, I think it's 3% of the entire DAO token that you've got access to in a pool. Modded Outlaw keeps a great information page going so that you can see the leaderboard of people who have burned. And I think it only takes 200 or 300 million Upliftium to top that leaderboard right now. I don't think it's very much. So definitely worth considering that right now and not to be thinking about holding it.
Yeah, and I think we were over on Modded Outlaw's site last night, were we not, Corey? There's a bunch of really
I'm gonna post that now. I actually didn't know that you could scroll down past the 100 landowners to get the top 100 Upliftium burners. I'm like gonna be in the top 10. That's
we were loving everything that was on that site except the fact that we only have 15.
Yeah, it says there's only been
15
screenshots. No, but whatever, it's fine.
But it's good. Definitely check it out and scroll through the stats on that.
To be fair, there probably only have been 15 screenshot sessions that people have paid Upliftium for. Way more picture installs. Right?
That's
you're just stupid, Jimmy. That's right? What's really happening.
Yeah, totally me being stupid and not. Okay, fair enough. Actually, that makes all the sense because we were a little bit surprised at some of the numbers. We thought maybe the picture installs would be higher and the portal installs would be lower when we were looking at it last night. It seemed like that was...
Well, and I do think we have a catch-up processing wave to do. I think now that once we get these rewards out for this week and last week and get the shards out, that would be the next priority, is just to get the backlog processed. We're going to try to process everything, all the orders that are put in, so that they're all paid for right before we push the button for the snapshot. So there shouldn't be any, hey, I got my order in and it wasn't processed. Did I make the snapshot questions? But it would be nice to do one or two between now and then too, so that people can watch their leaderboard change.
So yeah, let's dive into some of these questions in the comments. This one's first up. I'd worry about people having an edge, like for auctions. Some people may be able to access and see things that others can't buy for features, loot, spawners. I actually had this thought as well. And we've had internal discussions around the possibility that if you sit on certain committees, then your ability to interact as a normal, member might be restricted, right? Tuttle, maybe you can expand upon this a little bit. Like there's probably going to be rules outlining what you can't do.
So the big one that we've come up with so far is if you're on the rewards committee and if you're going to be privy to how rewards go out based on activity, then we're going to lock your rewards earned to some sort of average rate, right, instead of having it be linked to your in-game stuff. So for some people who aren't very active in game, that's actually an advantage, right? Right. For some people who are very active in game, that might not necessarily be an advantage. We've always said that the team should be able to participate in sales, and like we're heading more towards the entire DAO and therefore the whole community being considered the team. So like, I don't think we want to be excluding people from participating in sales. There's always going to be the issue with things like this that, it's Minecraft ultimately. The people who have the most in-depth arcane knowledge of Minecraft are going to be able to pull the most information from what's going on right now. I'd almost err more towards like, how do we get plot surveys out and available to people so that everybody has access to information like that? Rather than trying to limit people from participating in an auction because they might have extra information. I also think it'll sort of show up, like especially in auctions, if you've got some bright red spots where, it's only staff bidding or something like that, it's pretty obvious that somebody had knowledge. So I think that'll be a good way to help flag things if they did come up. I definitely don't think people should be using their own knowledge or anything that was gained there asymmetrically to get an advantage here. But yeah, I'd rather get more information out.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point about like the rewards, and that was kind of what I was alluding to, right? Like I personally actually don't even know what I get rewarded for. There's very few people on the team that are almost never in game that actually know what people get rewarded for, and it changes on a regular basis, I guess, through the seasons. So that's kind of something that people can see, right? Like we're not farming our rewards to maximize our capacity to take advantage of the rules that we set. I would say it's actually quite the opposite. We're actually keeping that information very quite guarded, which goes kind of back to your point. There might be a way for people who want to be on that committee and understand what the rewards and the value are and set that up to not be actually part of the rewards pool and benefit in other ways, right? Scrolling down. There's a lot of comments here. Yeah, so I think this might be worth addressing. I saw the Borvalis and Swineland lands got added to the Uplift drip pool. There was a couple days leeway there, thanks to everyone who understood that. It took a little bit of time. We had never actually really plugged that in before. The pool actually mines 1.5 million more since the auction finished. It was 255.5 million. Now it's 260 million. I'm not really sure what that comment means. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of address the fact that there was a small window there where people weren't getting the drips, and thank you to the community for understanding. When is the snapshot for the Dowel airdrop being taken? I don't know if we have an exact date, but we might have a general idea.
Yeah, we haven't announced a date, but it's almost certain it's going to be the 1st, right? Like either the 31st or the 1st, but I think doing the 1st of the month at, 0 at midnight GMT or whatever could do well. But yeah, we'll make an announcement when we know exactly where everyone's going to be at the right time for the snapshot. It's not going to be weeks after that suddenly, though. We're more or less ready for it.
I mean, I think we're through them all.
They asked us everything?
I think so. I mean, if you guys have any other comments. So there was another comment that was addressed up top.
Well, and just to Chris's point in the comments, there's a 1.5 million increase in the Upliftium distribution when we added the rail from Borvalis and Twineland, if I'm not mistaken. But
so actually, it might be. I think that we did this early in the episode, but kind of haphazardly and not so clearly. So maybe we could explain how the Upliftium drips in the pools system kind of works. So like each kind of category has its own kind of pool, right? And so dependent upon how many NFTs are registered in that pool will depend upon the drip size, right? Like it's not like across the board every NFT gets a certain amount. I mean, I was in there the other day and I was quite shocked to realize that like one of the highest contributing pools from Lands and Rail was actually the Gratitude Rail, because a lot of people in Gratitude were going towards the bigger plot sizes that were on auction, because those had never been offered before. And the rail was 50 by 50. And because the pool size was set to a predetermined amount, when it came out, the drips per hour of the Gratitude Rail were actually huge. And I was like blown away. I was like, wow, this is great. Because like I was doing the connector Sky Rail and it kind of worked out really well for me. And I didn't even know about that information type of thing, right? So but yeah, is there anything I'm missing there, right? Like pool sizes don't affect, I don't know exactly how to explain this, but the pool sizes per NFT that's slated for those drips is not the same as the overall like Chris kind of went into this earlier in the AMA session. Different NFTs will be based on different pools, but the pools are always kind of set at a certain amount.
Well, that's like correct? Chris, didn't we increase the amount for that to accommodate the new NFT sets? I think that's all they're asking.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was just the Borvalis and Swineland rails that didn't have a pool before and do now. I don't think Gratitude Rail was missing, but it might have been.
No. I don't think it was missing, because I think Gratitude Rail went out in the first estate
phase
option.
1, right? Yeah. And so I think it was just those two. And so, but I think it was 750,000 Upliftium per week for those pools right now. So yeah, we would have increased it by 1.5 million total per week.
But obviously,
and that also increases the active rewards by 1.5 million per week. So now there's a little bit more Upliftium going out to everyone for playing in game.
Yeah, it was a pretty small increase.
And obviously, like the pools are a set amount, so the less people who hold in that pool, the higher rewards will be.
Correct.
I think that might be it. I kind of want to say one more thing too, because it was up further in the comments about onboarding. Corey and I are going to be back tomorrow, and I'm kind of excited about this. We haven't done a Media Moguls episode in a while, and as some of you know, I work for a few different projects, and one of the projects that I work for is Generate EOS, which is a block producer, and I run a pitch deck, which is a 20 to 30 minute episode on people trying to get funding through the Pomelo grants. And this lady mailed me the other day, and she's like, I don't want to actually do the grant proposal. I'm going to pull it because it's actually quite difficult for me, because nobody can support my project, because buying EOS is really difficult, and I'm a little bit pissed about it. And so I said, hey, why don't you come on our Media Moguls channel, because she's quite interesting, and talk about onboarding. And I think that this is going to be a really interesting discussion. So please tune in tomorrow, because we, again, had this conversation yesterday, Corey, about onboarding and Wax being as brilliant as it is, and how this is kind of affect the whole ecosystem. So I think this is going to be really interesting to play out. Again, if you're out there in the comments and you're worried about getting people in to the Wax ecosystem for the servers that we have, definitely check out Wombat. I mean, we support Wombat. We also support Wax Cloud Wallet, which is free, easy onboarding to be able to get a Wax account and jump right into the Uplift world, where people can go to enter.theuplift.com and whitelist you to an account. So those are the easiest onboarding sections that we have. If there's any geniuses out there that want to contribute articles to onboarding or getting Wax Cloud Wallet accounts or getting Wombat Wallet accounts, I know Jen did a great tutorial not so long ago. We're definitely going to put those up on where we hide allthealpha.com. We would love your contributions to both things that are happening in the Uplift world and from a technological perspective in order to get people onboarding. And I think this is going to become even more important when we start branching out to other chains, right? Because like if we go to Ethereum and we go to other places, we're going to need really easy tutorials in order for people to get passports, for example, to be able to come in and check out events. So anyone who's out there that's tech savvy, please, get in touch with me and let's get that information, basic information of how to apply for a blockchain account up on where we hide all the alpha.com, so that we're ready to showcase this to the world when we move to other chains. Definitely.
Yep. So, rock and roll. I have to mirror what you were saying, Chris, as far as like just the how awesome it is that everybody is as engaged as they are. Like obviously we spend an absolutely ridiculous amount of time thinking about all this stuff, but it's really cool that all of you guys are doing the same. And ultimately it's like that's the secret sauce of that DAO energy once we capture it, is that it's not our 10 minds and taking in ideas from a few people or however much bandwidth we can do, but really expanding that out so that it feels more like 100 or 200 very serious and very smart people that are kind of co-creating this whole thing. Like hot diggity, it's gonna be pretty cool. Good talk.
Come back tomorrow. It's gonna flip and rocket.